You are walking through a European city in the 18th century, just after sunset. The transition is abrupt. Daylight does not fade gently here. It disappears. Within a short span of time, the city loses its clarity. Edges soften, colors drain away, and familiar forms collapse into shadow. What remains visible is fragmented, incomplete, and temporary. There are no streetlights waiting to replace the sun. As the last light drops below the horizon, the city withdraws from view. Darkness does not arrive evenly. It pools in corners, gathers in narrow streets, fills courtyards and alleyways first. Wider streets hold on to visibility for a few moments longer, but even they soon lose definition. You slow your pace instinctively. During the day, movement through the city is guided by sight. At night, movement depends on memory. You know where the street bends. You remember where the stones rise unevenly. You recall which walls push inward, narrowing the path. Without that knowledge, walking becomes uncertain. The city feels smaller now, not because its boundaries have changed, but because only parts of it are accessible. Darkness removes options. Routes that were practical during daylight are avoided after sunset. Shortcuts disappear. Open spaces become risks rather than conveniences. Light exists, but only in fragments. A candle glows behind a shuttered window. A lantern swings briefly at the corner of a street, then vanishes. A small fire burns low in a courtyard, its glow contained and defensive. These sources do not illuminate the city. They merely interrupt the darkness. You notice how carefully light is used. Candles are expensive. Oil is limited. Fire is dangerous. Illumination is controlled, shielded, kept close to the body or behind thick walls. Light is not public infrastructure. It is private property. The streets empty quickly. As night falls, shops close early. Market activity ends. Doors are barred. Shutters are secured. What was once a public, shared environment collapses inward. Life moves behind walls. You pass houses already sealed for the night. The city turns opaque. Only certain places remain active. Taverns emit a dull glow through thick windows. Their doors open and close quickly, minimizing exposure. These spaces act as islands of light and sound in an otherwise dark city. Movement changes. Those who walk at night do so with purpose. There is no wandering, no casual strolling. Every step has intent. You see pairs of figures moving together, keeping close to walls, avoiding the center of the street. A lone figure with a lantern appears ahead. The light sways gently, revealing pieces of the street as it moves, cobblestones, a doorway, a section of wall, then swallowing them again. The lantern does not push back the darkness. It negotiates with it. You become aware of sound. Footsteps carry farther now. A cough echoes longer than expected. A distant voice seems closer than it is. Without sight to anchor perception, sound becomes disorienting. You listen more carefully. You also become aware of your own presence. The sound of your steps, the rhythm of your breathing, the way your shadow shifts when you pass near a light source. At night, the city makes you visible to yourself. You notice how uneven the ground feels underfoot. During the day, these streets are navigable without thought. At night, every irregularity matters. Loose stones, shallow gutters, changes in slope. A misstep can cause injury, and injury at night carries greater risk. You keep close to the familiar. Landmarks matter differently now. A known doorway, a recognizable wall texture, a specific smell drifting from a workshop or stable. These cues replace visual certainty. The absence of light also alters authority. You hear the presence of guards before you see them, the clink of metal, the deliberate rhythm of boots, a voice calling out, asking questions. Control at night is exercised through sound and proximity rather than visibility. You realize that darkness redistributes power. Those who know the city well move with confidence. Those who do not hesitate. Locals navigate by memory. Outsiders falter. Knowledge becomes a form of safety. You pass a narrow alley and do not enter it. During the day, it would save time. At night, it is avoided without question. Darkness fills it completely. You cannot see its end. You cannot see who might be inside it. The city teaches avoidance through experience. Windows remain dark or tightly covered. Light leaking outward signals presence, vulnerability, or wealth. Most households keep illumination contained. At night, being unseen is safer than being visible. You notice how social life compresses. Conversations occur behind closed doors. Families gather inward. Community becomes smaller, tighter, more controlled. Public interaction gives way to domestic routine. The city does not function the same way after sunset. Economic activity slows dramatically. Work that requires visibility stops. Crafts are set aside. Deliveries wait until morning. The night is not productive time. It is survival time. You realize how dependent daily life is on daylight. Without artificial illumination, the city's usable hours are limited. Night is not an extension of the day. It is a separate condition, governed by different rules. You hear a bell in the distance. It marks time, but not precisely. It reminds inhabitants that the night is advancing, that curfews, informal or enforced, are approaching, that certain movements are no longer acceptable. The city regulates itself through darkness. Fear is not constant, but awareness is. You notice how even familiar streets feel altered. Buildings appear taller, heavier. Corners feel sharper. The city's architecture becomes imposing when stripped of daylight. You sense how behavior adjusts accordingly. Voices lower. Gestures become restrained. People avoid drawing attention. Night rewards discretion. As you continue walking, you understand that this darkness is not accidental. It is a defining feature of urban life in the 18th century. Before public lighting, the city belongs to daylight. At night, it retreats, contracts, and reshapes itself. You are not just walking through the same city after dark. You are walking through a different version of it. One where visibility is limited, movement is controlled, and safety depends on knowledge rather than infrastructure. This is what it feels like when the city loses the light. You continue walking through the city as night settles fully into place. By now, darkness is no longer advancing. It has taken over. What remains active in the city has adapted to it. What is not, has withdrawn. This is when the city's systems of control become more apparent, not through spectacle, but through restriction. You notice that movement is no longer evenly distributed. During the day, streets belong to everyone. After sunset, access narrows. Some people still move freely, while others disappear from view entirely. This is not accidental. The night reorganizes who belongs where. You hear voices ahead, measured, deliberate. A pair of guards approaches from the opposite direction. You recognize them before you see them. Their boots strike the ground with intention. Metal shifts softly at their sides. They walk at a steady pace, neither hurried nor hesitant. Their presence reshapes the street. As they approach, others adjust. A figure pauses near a doorway. Another turns slightly, keeping distance. Movement becomes cautious, calculated. The guards do not need to intervene to exert authority. Their visibility is enough. You realize that at night, power is audible before it is visible. Guards rely on sound, familiarity, and repetition. They know which doors should be closed, which streets should be quiet, which movements are unusual. Darkness amplifies deviation. You pass a small post where one guard lingers. A lantern hangs nearby, casting a controlled circle of light. The guard stands just outside it, using the darkness as much as the illumination. Light reveals others. Shadow protects authority. You understand that night changes how surveillance works. There are no elevated vantage points illuminated across the city. Control is local, embodied, immediate. It depends on patrols, on recognition, on memory. You notice how the city expects stillness. Shutters remain closed. Windows rarely open. Activity is compressed into known spaces. A noise where there should be silence draws attention immediately. You hear it yourself, a sudden sound echoing from a side street. A dropped object. A misstep. The sound lingers longer than it should. You sense the city listening. Night magnifies accountability. If you are out after dark, you are visible by your very presence. Absence is normal. Movement is exceptional. You walk past a gate set into the street, one of many that regulate access after sunset. It stands partially closed, narrowing passage. These barriers are not always locked. Their function is psychological as much as physical. They remind you that movement is conditional. You recall that many cities enforce curfews, sometimes formally, sometimes through custom, sometimes through the simple thread of questioning. The rules are not always written, but they are widely understood. You notice how people carry proof of legitimacy. A lantern suggests purpose. Traveling in pairs suggests belonging. Familiar routes suggest local knowledge. At night, these signals matter more than words. You realize how darkness strengthens hierarchy. Those with authority, guards, officials, messengers, move with fewer constraints. Their presence explains itself. Others must justify their movement simply by how they move. You pass a small group standing close together near a wall. They speak quietly. Their posture is inward, guarded. They disperse quickly as footsteps approach. The night discourages gathering. It breaks crowds into fragments. It favors individuals and pairs over groups. Collective presence becomes suspicious. You walk past a residence where light flickers briefly as a shutter opens and closes. The action is quick, deliberate. Exposure is minimized. Even domestic life adapts to the expectation of invisibility. You understand that privacy and safety overlap here. To be seen is to be known. To be known is to be accountable. Darkness allows anonymity, but only to those who know how to use it. You hear another bell in the distance. This one signals the passing of time, but also compliance. It reminds inhabitants that the city has entered a different phase. That expectations have changed. Night is not lawless. It is regulated differently. You pass a familiar intersection. During the day, it is noisy, crowded, alive. Now it is nearly empty. The open space feels exposed. You cross it quickly, aware that lingering draws attention. You notice how light pools affect behavior. People move from one illuminated patch to another, minimizing time spent in full darkness. Lanterns are used strategically, not continuously. They reveal only what is necessary. You become aware of who is absent. Vendors, children, craftsmen, the elderly. Most of the population is no longer part of the city's visible life. What remains is a narrow slice of urban society. The night filters the city. You hear laughter briefly from inside a tavern. It is muted, contained. The door opens, releasing a burst of sound and warmth, then closes again. The street absorbs the silence. These spaces operate under tolerance rather than approval. They are allowed to exist, but monitored. Their activity is known, expected, and constrained. Excess spills outward only briefly. You realize that control at night is not constant enforcement. It is the management of boundaries. You walk past a wall where markings indicate past notices, warnings, decrees, announcements. They are harder to read now. Literacy and visibility intersect. At night, authority relies less on written rules and more on presence. You hear footsteps behind you and do not turn immediately. You listen first. The pace, the weight, the rhythm. Your response is delayed, measured. Night teaches patience before reaction. When you do turn, you see only partial forms. A cloak, a lantern held low. No immediate threat, but no certainty either. You continue walking. You realize how quickly the body adapts. Movements become quieter. Awareness sharpens. Attention narrows. The city trains its inhabitants to survive reduced information. You pass a building used for administration during the day. Now it is closed, silent. Authority has shifted from institutions to individuals, from offices to patrols. The city's governance becomes personal. You notice how familiarity equals safety. Those who belong move naturally. Those who do not hesitate. At night, hesitation is visible. You understand that the city uses darkness as a tool. It limits activity without force. It discourages disorder without constant intervention. It reinforces social boundaries quietly. As you continue walking, you sense that the night is not merely a time without light. It is a system, one that reorganizes movement, enforces hierarchy, and concentrates power in fewer hands. This is how the city governs itself when it cannot be seen. You keep walking, and the city begins to feel heavier. Not louder, not more active, heavier. During the day, danger is distributed. It blends into crowds, noise, and constant motion. At night, danger condenses. It gathers in specific places, moments, and silences. You become aware of it not through events, but through anticipation. You notice how your body reacts before your mind does. Your pace adjusts without conscious decision. You avoid the center of the street. You keep a measured distance from doorways and corners. You do not stop unless necessary. These behaviors feel instinctive, but they are learned. The night teaches caution through repetition. You pass an intersection where 4 streets meet. During the day, it is neutral ground. Now it feels exposed. Too many directions. Too many blind angles. You cross quickly, minimizing time spent in the open. Risk here is not constant. It is uneven. Some streets feel relatively safe. Others feel immediately wrong. The difference is subtle. Familiarity, width, proximity to guarded routes, the presence or absence of light. You cannot always explain it, but you trust it. You notice how darkness distorts distance. A sound may be closer than it seems. A shape may be farther away. Depth is unreliable. You slow down not because something is happening, but because something might. You pass a narrow alley that disappears into shadow almost immediately. You do not look down it. You do not need to. Everyone knows what darkness without exit feels like. At night, the city becomes selective. You hear a sudden noise, a quick movement, a scuffle of feet. It stops almost as quickly as it began. No cries follow. No intervention. The city absorbs the moment without reaction. This is how risk exists here. Brief, ambiguous, unresolved. You realize how fear operates differently than panic. Panic is loud and sudden. Fear is quiet and sustained. It shapes behavior over time. It does not demand attention. It demands adjustment. You notice how people carry themselves. Cloaks are held closer. Hands remain visible. Gestures are minimal. No one moves erratically unless intoxicated or desperate. Predictability becomes a form of safety. You pass a group leaving a tavern. Their voices are louder than the street allows. Laughter spills outward briefly, then collapses as they move away from the doorway. They separate quickly, each choosing a different route. Even celebration is contained. You understand that accidents are as dangerous as crime. A fall in the dark can break bones. A wrong step into a gutter can disable a worker for weeks. At night, injury carries compounded risk, not just pain, but exposure, delay, and vulnerability. You walk carefully, scanning the ground ahead with what little light reaches it. You place each step deliberately. The city demands this attention. You pass a section of street where the surface changes unexpectedly. The stones are uneven here. You remember it from daylight. Now, memory replaces vision. Without it, you would stumble. The night punishes unfamiliarity. You hear voices arguing somewhere behind closed doors. The sound is muffled, distorted by walls. You cannot tell how serious it is. You do not intervene. Neither does anyone else. Privacy and danger overlap in the dark. You realize how many disputes, injuries, and crimes go unseen. Not because they are rare, but because the night conceals them. Darkness is not just absence of light. It is absence of witnesses. You pass a doorway where someone stands half-hidden, watching the street. Their posture is still, deliberate. You cannot see their face clearly. You adjust your path slightly, maintaining distance. No exchange occurs. This is enough. You sense how reputation matters at night. People known locally move with less fear. Their presence is recognized. Strangers carry risk simply by being unknown. Identity is inferred from movement, clothing, confidence. You notice how certain dangers are accepted as inevitable. Pickpocketing, assault, theft. These are not constant threats, but known possibilities. The city does not expect to eliminate them. It expects inhabitants to adapt. You hear the distant call of a watchman. Not a warning, not an alarm. A signal of presence. A reminder that someone is awake, listening, moving. The sound travels far in the quiet air. This call does not promise safety. It promises awareness. You realize that fear here is not paralyzing. It is instructional. It teaches routes, timing, posture, restraint. It narrows behavior into safe channels. It limits spontaneity. You notice how this affects the poorest inhabitants most. Those without secure housing have nowhere to retreat. Those without lanterns must move in deeper darkness. Those without reputation or protection face greater exposure. Darkness amplifies inequality. You pass a figure sleeping in a recessed doorway. They are still wrapped tightly. Their presence is tolerated, but precarious. Night offers concealment, but also risk. You do not stop. The city encourages movement over observation. You realize how the night reshapes morality. Actions that would be unacceptable during the day, avoidance, silence, non-intervention, become normal after dark. Survival overrides social expectation. You walk on, feeling the weight of accumulated caution. The city is quieter now, but not calmer. Tension has not disappeared. It has spread thinly across every step. You understand that fear here is not a response to specific threats. It is a condition of urban life after sunset, one that structures behavior, reinforces boundaries, and teaches restraint. This is how the city feels when visibility disappears and responsibility becomes personal. Not chaotic, but cautious, and always alert. You continue walking, and the city begins to fold inward. By this point in the night, most activity has withdrawn from the streets. What remains visible is not movement, but enclosure. Doors are closed. Shutters are fastened. The city no longer presents itself openly. It protects itself by retreat. You notice how few interiors reveal any light at all. Most windows are dark or tightly covered. When a candle is lit inside, it stays behind thick wood or heavy fabric. Light is carefully contained. To let it spill into the street would signal presence, wakefulness, vulnerability. Night encourages concealment. You pass houses where entire families have gathered into a single room. Heat, light, and company are concentrated. Other rooms remain unused, unlit. Space is reduced to what is necessary. Inside these homes, time slows. The day's labor has ended, and there is little to replace it. Activities are limited by visibility. Reading is difficult. Fine work is impossible. Conversation fills the gaps. Silence, too. You imagine people orienting themselves by memory rather than sight. Familiar furniture. Known corners. Every household learns its own internal map for the dark hours. The home becomes the primary unit of safety. You notice how sharply this contrasts with daylight. During the day, the city distributes life outward, markets, streets, workshops. At night, life collapses inward. The household replaces the street as the center of experience. You pass a doorway where voices leak out briefly. The door opens just enough to allow someone inside, then closes again. The exchange is quick. Exposure is minimized. Movement between interiors is limited. Visits happen early or not at all. Night discourages social circulation. Relationships become local, immediate, bounded by distance and familiarity. You approach a tavern, one of the few places still active. Its windows glow faintly. The light is muted, filtered through thick glass or fabric. Sound escapes in short bursts when the door opens, laughter, argument, song, then disappears again. These spaces act as pressure valves. They gather what the streets have expelled. Travelers without lodging. Workers without private space. Men unwilling or unable to return home yet. The tavern becomes a controlled exception to nighttime withdrawal. Inside, the atmosphere is dense. Light flickers unevenly. Shadows move across walls. Faces appear and vanish as people shift. The air smells of smoke, alcohol, sweat. Time loses precision here. Conversation drifts. Yet even here, behavior is restrained. Excess draws attention. Disorder invites intervention. Taverns are tolerated, not ignored. Their continued operation depends on maintaining limits. You do not linger. You continue walking, and the tavern's light fades behind you. Darkness resumes its dominance. You notice how the city provides few public shelters. There are no illuminated squares, no open halls, no communal lighting. Nighttime refuge is private or commercial. Those without access to either remain exposed. You pass a recessed doorway where someone has arranged themselves carefully against the wall. Cloak pulled tight, head lowered. Stillness as protection. Sleep here is shallow, provisional. Night turns architecture into shelter. Doorways, arches, alcoves, features meant for passage become places of pause. The city's physical form offers limited refuge, unevenly distributed. You realize how night intensifies dependence on community. Those with family, household, or employer have somewhere to retreat. Those without must negotiate space quietly, temporarily, invisibly. Inside homes, behavior adjusts accordingly. Candles are extinguished early to conserve resources. Fires are banked rather than fed. The night is not a time of abundance. It is a time of conservation. You imagine people listening for footsteps outside, for voices in the street, for sounds that do not belong. Night sharpens attention inward as much as outward. You hear a door being bolted shut nearby. The sound is final, deliberate. It marks a boundary. What happens outside no longer concerns those inside. The city fractures into sealed units. Each household becomes its own enclosed world, disconnected from others by darkness and distance. Shared urban life dissolves temporarily. You realize how much trust is placed in walls. Walls replace visibility. They provide security not by revealing danger, but by blocking it. Night tests their effectiveness. You pass another tavern farther away, quieter than the last. Fewer voices, less light. Even these spaces begin to thin as the night deepens. Eventually, only essential movement remains. Messengers, guards, those with no alternative. Everyone else has retreated as far as they can. You feel how the city slows, not to rest, but to waiting for morning. waiting for light to return and reconnect what darkness has separated. The night is not productive. It is preservative. It keeps bodies contained, resources intact, order manageable. As you continue walking, the sense of enclosure becomes almost physical. The city presses inward. The streets feel narrower. The buildings feel heavier. You understand that the absence of public lighting does more than darken the city. It reorganizes social life. It limits interaction. It reduces exposure. It defines who belongs where after sunset. This is how the city survives the night. By withdrawing. By compressing life into protected interiors. By enduring darkness rather than challenging it. You keep walking, and the city settles into its final nighttime state. By now, movement is rare. Not because it is forbidden, but because it has lost its purpose. The night has reached a point where almost everything that can withdraw has already done so. What remains is not activity, but duration. Silence becomes the dominant feature. Not absolute silence, never that, but a layered quiet. Footsteps are distant and isolated. Sounds occur singly, not in clusters. A door closes somewhere far away. A cough echoes briefly, then disappears. The city speaks in fragments. You become aware of how time feels different now. During the day, time is marked by tasks, signals, obligations. At night, especially without public lighting, time stretches. Minutes lose definition. The absence of visual change makes duration harder to measure. The city waits. You notice how the built environment reinforces this stillness. Streets are empty enough that your own movement feels intrusive. You slow down without intending to, matching the pace of the night. You hear the call of a watchman again. It travels farther now, uninterrupted by other noise. The call does not demand response. It confirms continuity. Someone is awake. Someone is counting the hours. Nighttime authority is about presence, not intervention. You realize how this rhythm structures expectation. The city does not expect anything new to happen now. The goal is endurance. To make it through until dawn without disruption. You pass buildings that feel dormant rather than closed. Their mass is more noticeable in the dark. Walls appear thicker. Rooflines heavier. Architecture feels less decorative, more protective. The city becomes physical again. During the day, visual detail distracts from structure. At night, with detail removed, weight and volume dominate. The city feels ancient, solid, unyielding. You notice how your awareness turns inward. You listen to your breathing. You count your steps. You monitor your pace. Night reduces external stimulation, forcing attention back onto the self. You understand why people avoid unnecessary movement at this hour. There is nothing to gain by being outside. Only exposure. Only fatigue. Only risk. You pass a familiar square, now completely empty. During the day, it organizes circulation. At night, it offers no function. Its openness feels excessive. You cross it quickly, not because of fear, but because it has no purpose now. The city's spatial logic has changed. Spaces that exist for gathering, exchange, or visibility lose relevance. Narrow, familiar routes gain importance. Efficiency is replaced by containment. You realize how routine governs this period. People know when to sleep, when to wake, when to tend fires, when to listen. Night is not improvised. It is managed through habit. You imagine households lying awake, not fully asleep, not fully alert. Fires banked, candles extinguished, sounds from the street filtered through walls. Sleep arrives unevenly. The city does not sleep all at once. It dozes in layers. Some rest deeply. Others remain alert by necessity or duty. The night accommodates multiple states of consciousness. You hear an animal moving somewhere, hooves, a cart shifting, a dog barking briefly. These sounds feel louder now, not because they are, but because there is nothing to compete with them. You notice how the absence of light intensifies imagination. Shadows suggest forms that vanish when you look directly. Sounds imply presence that never fully materializes. The mind fills gaps left by vision. The city teaches restraint through uncertainty. You understand that this waiting is collective. Thousands of people in separate rooms behind separate walls are passing through the same hours. Isolated but synchronized. The night binds them through shared limitation. This is not loneliness. It is enforced quiet. You hear another bell marking time. Its meaning is vague. It does not signal action. It marks progress. The night advances. You feel fatigue accumulate, not physical exertion, but attentional fatigue. Staying alert in low information conditions is tiring. This, too, discourages prolonged activity. The city relies on this effect. By exhausting attention, it reduces movement. By reducing movement, it maintains order. You pass the edge of the city where structures thin out. Beyond this point, darkness becomes absolute. There are no walls, no markers, no known surfaces. The boundary between city and countryside dissolves completely. You turn back, not because of fear, but because there is nothing to orient you beyond. Without light, the city's edges are not meant to be crossed. You realize how dawn will reverse all of this. Light will reconnect streets, restore distance, invite movement, expand activity outward again. But for now, the city remains contracted. Time passes slowly but reliably. The city has survived countless nights like this. Each one reduces life to essentials. Each one tests routines. Each one reinforces dependence on daylight. You continue walking until there is no reason to continue. Eventually you stop, not at a destination, but at a point of rest. The night does not encourage arrival. It encourages stillness. You understand that living in a city without public lighting means accepting darkness as part of urban structure. Not as a problem to solve, but as a condition to endure. The night belongs to waiting. Waiting for the return of visibility. Waiting for the return of movement. Waiting for the return of the shared city. Until then, the city remains quiet, compressed, and patient. This is what urban life feels like when the night belongs to shadow. Not dramatic, not empty, but suspended, until the light comes back.